Well, hello and welcome back to Grassroots Warriors Network. My name is Sherri Divband, and I am your host on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am joined today by a really special guest, Abby Lynn. I'll tell you all about her, but first I want to say hi and welcome you to my channel, Abby. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. We were able to actually meet in person, which is actually so rare when you're used to doing the podcast, social media. And it was just lovely to meet you in person. And we both hold that space of being moms and working in the same field. We work in the same energy field. So it's just always nice to meet
Yeah.
someone.
Yes. Well, yeah. Abby had a previous podcast that I was a guest on, I think a couple of times. It's been a few years now. Time just has flown by. So we
Mhm,
knew of each other,
mhm.
and we were both recently at the Journey to Truth conference in Grafton, Illinois, in May, and we finally got to meet in person. And so it was lovely to meet you in person. And like everybody, it's just so nice to actually be able to like touch people and be like, hi, and not through the computer screen. And we hit it off. I really like your work, and I like you and everything you do. And I got to meet one of your daughters and your little puppy, and it was a great time. So I wanted to have you come on my channel just to tell everybody a little bit about the work that you do, and maybe a little bit of a background. So tell everybody, Abby, what you do as far as energy healing and in the coaching and in your sessions, and then maybe we can kind of rewind a little bit and talk about how you got there and what your childhood was like, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Perfect, lovely. And I have to add, I love your background, that strong, that warrior, divine, feminine energy. I resonate a
Thank
lot with
you.
that, and so nicely done versus my blurred background.
Thank you.
um, yeah. So how I work is it's always a journey, and they're like, my guys are saying it's important just to note this for everyone at home listening to this. It's, when you're hearing from someone and, oh, and I do XYZ and, all these different things, it was always a journey to get there. It never just on Tuesday I didn't say I want to do all of these things. And it's the process, it's the layers. So I have always been tapped into the spiritual side, but we can talk about that in a minute. But it really wasn't until I finally, my higher self and my guide said, you have to look at this, because it kept gnawing on the side. It was my secret life being tapped into, the spiritual energy, into the off-worlder energy. And it was when I finally addressed it and brought it up into my life that I started off first being an energy healer. And now I lovingly joke that I think that Reiki and energy healing is the gateway drug into everything
I think the
else.
same thing. That's so funny. Yep.
And so honestly, very quickly when I started working in that, the mediumship came right in, the psychic came right in, the channeling came in from that. And it just really grows and progresses, because what you're really doing is you're opening a window, a door per se, inside of the brain. And even and to do remote viewing, you go into that theta space. And if no one understands it, if you have ever done a past life regression or a quantum healing session, that same space that you get into, that brain where you're teetering between being awake and asleep, that's theta. And so you are literally opening a door, and in that same space is where remote viewing comes in, and that's where a lot of the connections. And once you've opened that door, things can continue to evolve and come into your awareness. And that's really where my journey, since we just came journey to truth, that's where it started, and how it's evolved over a number of years. And then what I've done is I've added in the meditation tools, and I've trained in quantum healing now, and I've trained further into opening psychic abilities and mediumship. And it's a continuous learning. I've been on a continuous learning journey, both with trusting myself. So much of this is surrendering into who we already are. Um, we're, as we're working, we're really just remembering things we've done in other lifetimes. And, people talk about reincarnation and, oh, I've had this life and this life. That doesn't go away after death and transition. It's all cellular memory. So really what you're doing is you're calling forward, just like that beautiful warrior woman behind you. We're calling forward all of these memories and abilities that we've occurred throughout the soul life, and we're using those, and so many of us chose to be here now because we need to use those tools and those abilities just to help other people. And a lot of it is just holding space while others are coming into their memory space, coming into their own I don't want to say capabilities, their own abilities for themselves. So that's what I do now. I do psychic readings, mediumship readings, energy readings, really just whatever the soul is needing at that time. So I call it soul readings. And really it is, I just open that door and we see what you're needing at that day and at that time.
Are you seeing, Abby, any kind of not correlation, that's not the right word. Like, are you seeing a lot of the same theme amongst your clientele right now? Kind of just where a lot of people are getting the same messages or needing to hear the same things. Some sort of, you know, uh, I can't think of the word, but it's similarities.
Yeah. In I would say about 2 years ago, I was getting a lot of occurrence of being, it was even showed for myself, just staying like for my own guides, it was showing me like a glass dome, like a snow globe, just like hunker down and hold this space, just hunker down. And it was important for the glass purview because we needed to be viewing what was going on, but we didn't need to participate in it. And
Yeah.
so that was a very common theme. And now what I'm seeing with a lot is, all right, it's really getting to that time. Things are starting to turn on in the body. And so now a lot of the guidance is working with clients as to how do we integrate this new energy that's already coming in, because it's almost the body is fighting it in a way, the shifting. And so it's feeling a lot of like joint aches, the body's getting inflamed, the headache, the pressure in the head, a lot of that is going on. And so the guidance team is coming through. How can we help you again to like open up and integrate this? And a lot of memories are coming forward.
Yeah,
So I
I
don't know
agree.
if you're what you're seeing with your clients, if you're seeing that.
Yeah, it's funny that you use the word holding the space, because that came to me years ago and I was like, what does that even mean? I mean, logically, I know what it means, right? But I kept getting that message in sessions years ago. It was probably around the middle to point of the pandemic. And that's when I opened my YouTube channel, was around that period. It was fall. And one of my first videos, I talked about holding the space because a lot of people were just opening up and didn't really know what to do with the energy. And I said, just hold the space for others. That's what a lot of us way showers and light workers are doing right now, is just holding the space for everybody else. And now I can see that yes, that has been done, and many played that role, but now it's like the activation is occurring, and we're seeing it physically with the ascension. We call them, a lot of people refer to them as the ascension symptoms, but it really means that our physical bodies are changing. And the memory, I think, seems to be the biggest struggle with people across the board, regardless of age or gender, is like the forgetfulness. And a lot of, I wonder what you're getting, but I'm being told, our physical bodies no longer need to hold the memory, the storage of it's because it has density to it. It kind of holds us down if we have all this stored in our brain. So much like our computers that hold the hard drive of the computers hold data, then we have this cloud, this magical cloud where we store things in now that does not necessarily hold us down. We just have access to it, which is our Akashic records, our higher self. There's lots of different ways to discern, but we're forgetting the day-to-day stuff because it doesn't hold as much relevance, where we're being fine-tuned to turn that aspect of us off, that primal aspect, so we could tap in moments. But there's this in-between period where we're like, what's that word again? what like, and that is very unraveling to a lot of people, and me, including myself, because it's making me feel like I'm a little cuckoo, where I literally can't come up with the words, or I can't remember things or names or places. Well, you're nodding, so are you experiencing that as well?
Well, yeah, and absolutely. And I've heard that the way that we used to recall memory, the reason why we're losing that is because that is attached to a linear understanding of time.
Yeah.
And we're moving into a space where we're always just in that moment. We're in that moment. And I've actually been working with my guides more. I snap my fingers a lot, because for me it's one of the tools that I use for instant communication, is because I always say everything after that snap is ego, like just give it to me now. And so if I'm looking for a word, I will literally go give it to me, and they'll help me when I'm forgetting
Brilliant.
a word. um yeah, I keep going into these weird. I actually, just a couple days ago, it came back to my surface. Oh, somebody wrote me a text message. They wrote it to me last night. I need to respond because it was the next morning. And I went to respond, and I looked, they texted me 5 days prior. And in my conception, they texted me right before I went to bed. So
Wow.
I keep having those time differentiation, gosh, again, I can't think of the word. But yes.
Yeah, I think the linear construct is of time is definitely breaking down, and
Mhm.
it's causing a lot of people to lose like time. Can't think of the word now either. It's like you're the we're losing time almost, where we don't have this perception of how long it's been, what day, what's today, what time is it, and again, that's all for our benefit. This is a progressive thing, but it can be really disconcerting for our human side, that primal aspect of us, because that's what we anchor to. We've needed that historically, but we don't need it anymore. So that's, this whole, there's so many things like that that are breaking down, and it's causing, I'm getting a lot of headaches. Are you seeing people getting a lot of headaches as well? I feel like I'm just getting these crazy headaches, and they just keep telling me, just it's detoxification, it's purification, and adjustments are occurring. There's a lot of activity in the pineal gland and the third eye, because we're seeing, another thing that I'm seeing is we're seeing through our third eye more.
Mhm.
So our visuals are changing, the colors are changing, what we like, everything outside is changing, and it's called, and our eyes literally physically have to adjust to that, which causes headaches and pressure. It's crazy what is happening with our bodies right now.
I was getting concerned about 2 years ago, because I would have these moments where my eye vision became, and I have 20/20 vision, where it would become very blurry.
Yeah.
And it was a concern for me, like, do I need to go get glasses? What is this? I've always had perfect vision. And my guides, while I was contemplating, they came in and they said, your eyes are changing. They are getting ready to perceive a much broader spectrum of color. And what's so interesting is the energies, everything is for our highest good. And so it's like we're getting little dips in, and then we come back, a little dip
Mhm.
in, and then we come back. And just the way with the pressure in the brain, the gray matter of the brain, and this came through with a lot of they call themselves the Source Collective. um but they're working on making more space within the gray matter, so that more light energy can be coming on. And again, I look at this body as a beautiful a machine, a beautiful computerized machine, and we're turning into that crystalline based.
Yeah.
And it's massive work. It's really, really massive work. And they were saying earlier, the reason why we're experiencing so much differentiation in time and understanding is we've been so anchored in the old energy of being anchored into this linear time. We're anchored into, I don't know why I'm saying, like, traditions, and this is how it's always been done. And and I'm recalling from before to know how I'm going forward, and that's no longer serving us. And so one of the reasons why we're becoming so forgetful is it's teaching us to be in that moment. And the reason why it's so important to know how to just be in a moment is because when that's where how you are existing, that's how you can shift more easily. Because when
Yeah.
you don't have those anchors to fall back on, then you can just shift and flow with things. That's just what they were telling me earlier.
Yeah, no, and that makes complete sense to me, and I completely agree with that. And you mentioned a few minutes ago too, your clients, I think you said they're getting their memories or their I can't remember how you put it, but how is that relaying for the clients that you have? Like, how are they? How are those memories coming through? And how are you helping them facilitate kind of the integration process of that?
Some of them are coming through in dreams for
Yeah,
them, so they're needing a lot of dream interpretation.
yeah,
And really, so how I've been shifting is the information is always best when it comes from within you, not from somebody else. And so often my guides will even tell me, like, you don't need it from me. What are you feeling? And so it's getting them to a space where they're getting information from their body. We've been so we've been stuck in that logos ego for so long on this plane that we overthink everything when the body already knows. The body knows everything. This is our best communicator, our best antenna. So one thing that I will help my clients do is to slow down the thought, get into that heart rhythm. And so through meditation, we get into those heart breaths, that heart rhythm, and then we feel into a memory. Where is it coming in at for you? What does that feel emotionally for you when you're coming in? And it's so interesting because just for myself, another aspect of me, it came in from my back. It walked in from and it just, so often people say, oh, they walked in from my side or it's my front, but this energy came in from my back. And that to me, it's like it's already been lived. It's an older energy and it's there as a support. And so a lot of times what these memories are coming in is, I think we're going into a space where we are going to need more support. We need a little bit more light inside of us, a little bit more, I don't want to say like girth in
yeah,
in in our trunks. I don't know why I want to say trunks, like in the root, like
yeah.
that knowingness, that sacral. And that's what a lot is stepping forward and just coming in and knowing I am. It's the I amness that's coming forward.
Absolutely. I love that. And the trunk is so appropriate because it's like that our roots that like our body is that essentially our trunk of a tree of our tree that roots into the ground and is connecting us to this planet right now, which is really one of the main uh antidotes to this 3D interference that I talk a lot about is grounding. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But we haven't been taught how to do that. We don't understand what that means, and many people don't think we have been programmed to believe through movies that it's woo woo because they make fun of it. Oh, we're gonna go hug a tree and all these hippies and this and that is a part of our programming that we're working through. But grounding is the best thing we can do for ourselves right now. And that looks different for everybody. It's not just a one size fits all approach. It's not just about hugging a tree. It's connecting in a way that is conducive for yourself and also where you live. What do you have access to? Is it the desert? Is it the ocean? Is it the mountains? Is it the forest? Or maybe you are lucky enough to have more than one. And that it's accessing those things. Do you live near? What do you live near? What do you have access to?
I live right near the ocean. I'm on the
Oh,
East
see,
Coast. So I'm only about 2 miles from the ocean, which is
yeah.
great. But even just behind my house, it's the Intercoastal Waterway runs by. So
Mhm.
I have a lot
Yeah.
of nature and I'm always seeing flowing water. And I just want to add, what you brought up, that we've been meant to believe that it's woo, and people kind of laugh about it with grounding and energy, but is not one of the first things that everybody does now in our culture is to make sure you have a charger for your phone? Do people go anywhere without a charger for their phone? It's in their car, it's next to their bed, it's in their family room. They have chargers everywhere. Why would we be any different? We need to charge ourselves. And this planet has provided so many chargers. And guess what? It's
Free. It's
free.
free. I just got full body goosebumps. That's so, yeah, because it is. And you know how they program us to charge is caffeine, these energy drinks, like everything that is not free, but also everything that actually depletes us, the sugars and all of that is the exact opposite of what we need. And the things that we do need are absolutely free. The sunlight and just being outside and immersing ourselves in nature. It's so free. It's
It
so
is.
funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, even like I was actually just talking to a client today about just different ways you can recharge the battery. And, so often we think just getting in the dirt, even if you have some house plants in there, if you don't live by the water or there isn't nature by you, do you have some house plants inside? Okay. So even though they're already planted and you think they're good, just go get another little bag of dirt, pull it out. Don't put gloves on your hands. Just get your hands in that dirt. And that is another way that you can re-energize the body.
Yeah, or get some crystals,
Mhm.
some salt lamps. I mean, there's so many things you can do to ground that I think that we don't, again, we're not taught this stuff. And we
No.
should be taught. We should be taught in school how to ground, how to connect with the earth, how to work with crystals, how to do all of this stuff that we're talking about. We don't. And so adults, are coming to me as my clients as, 30 all the way to 80-year-old men and women asking me how to ground, like asking for my help. And I'm sure that's happening to you as well. But if imagine a world, a generation where we're taught as children all of these things and we grow up and we know how to heal ourselves. We know how to go, our animals too. My dogs will go outside to go to the bathroom, right? And then on sunny days, which is a lot here in Florida, and my Doberman especially, he goes right into the middle of the yard and he sits and he just looks up at the sun. And I'm like, oh, you're getting your sunbathing, they know that it's important. And then when they get hot and it's too much, they get up and he wants to come back inside. I don't prompt him. I don't tell him to do that. It's just a natural thing. So our animals know how to do it. You can see birds and other animals in nature. They do it. They know exactly what to do. Why don't we know what to do? Because we're not taught what to do. We're taught the opposite, in fact.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I want to say it's taught out of us.
Yeah.
Don't go outside and play in the rain. You're going to get all wet. Don't go and jump in those mud puddles. You're going to ruin your shoes.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like all the things, because it's also the cleanliness aspect of at least American culture.
Yeah.
Don't go out and do that. Yes, and I have to bring up the sun. The sun changed last summer. I noticed it, and it is even stronger this summer. It is releasing light codes, and
Yeah.
even if this is too woo for the audience, it is healing. It is so healing right now. I had a little bit of E. coli poisoning about 6 weeks ago, and it was like my second or third day, and my gut was just like, gosh, it's just kind of something still there, and I just felt so drawn. Get out in the sun. Get out in the sun. And it's getting out in the sun with intention. And you don't put on sunglasses. This isn't what this is about. You're going out. And I went out there and I actually put my hands, over my stomach just at first, and just connected with that light and said, I know, not I need, I know
Yeah.
that I'm absorbing healing in this space right here. And then I just put my hands out and to receive, I put them out like this. And I was only out there for about 45 minutes, and all my pain was gone. It's just the tightness, the inflammation that was still lingering in my gut, it was just gone. And it felt amazing. So
It's healing. They don't want us to know. That's why they have us wear sunglasses, why they have us put toxic chemicals on our body called sunblock, because they don't want us to get that healing energy. We don't need all of those things now. But see, the other thing is though that this is the other layer to it. They manipulate us through encouraging us to sunbathe and be out for hours and hours and hours. So yeah, of course you're going to burn, because people say, well, that's ridiculous, Sherri. If I don't wear sunblock, I'm going to burn. And I say, well, that's because we are programmed to think we need to go and lay out at the pool or spend countless hours in the sun. And our ancestors knew better. They would go out and they would get their sun, and then they would go in the shade, or they would put, hats on, things like that to block the sun exposure so that you don't get, that sunburn. But it's all manipulation tactics. Everything that they tell us encourage us to go in the exact opposite direction. And the sunglasses and the sunblock is a big one. Big one.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring up the sunglasses is and this was my own learning that I discovered is for the first 10 to 15 minutes when you go out in the sun, it's important to not have them on, because the eyes, again, are giving messages to the brain of, I am outdoors in the sun right now.
Right.
And the body will begin to use its own natural protection
Yeah.
because it's being registered. I'm out in the sun.
Yeah.
Now, after those, 15 minutes, I have green eyes, so I'm super sensitive to light. So, after those 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then I'll put on my sunglasses if I'm feeling that, this is
Yeah.
starting to become agitated. But it is so important for those first 10 to 15 minutes. And even sun gazing, they say just do 10 to 15 minutes of sun gazing at sunrise or sunset, and then absorb that into the body. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I'm also really sensitive to the bright light. So I do wear sunglasses. I'm not saying that I don't wear sunglasses, but I do consciously keep them off for periods of time so that my body knows that I'm in the sun, and it opens the pineal and does all of those things. But then I do put my sunglasses back on sometimes, because otherwise my eyes start to water and I'm just like, oh, I can't see.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's all about being mindful. Everything we do is about being mindful, following our body and what it tells us to do. That's all we're saying. If we can just listen to those subtle signs, then we know what our body needs. Because what I need might be different than Abby, and it might be different than many people. We just have to be more intuitive and go within. And that's exactly why there is no psychic, no healer, no doctor, no nothing out there that can tell you exactly what you need, because only you get those signals in many different ways to tell you what you need. And so it's kind of one of those things where you have to learn to go within and tune in. Otherwise, you won't know what it is that you need. And there's no substitute out there for someone that can tell you what that is.
Yeah. And, and I want to add, and this, Sherri, it's, even when we're talking about all the grounding and regeneration, it's just simple. It really is so simple. And so I want everyone, the listeners home, it's not this complicated, step by step, complex getting in and understanding how to read your body. It's actually quite simple. It's just getting into that trust and surrender into yourself. We're surrendering to our own innate knowingness, and then going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do tend to overthink, but I think that is, again, part of the programming. The left, they train that left brain so much in us through so many different ways that we don't trust ourselves. So we overthink everything, we second guess. And most of us have a very active intuition. We just don't trust it. That gut feeling that we get, how many of those people watching this, including myself right now, admittedly, got the answer, but then we're like, I don't know. And then you go the other way and you're like, darn it, I should have listened, because you find out that you had it right the whole time. We do it all the time in many different ways, but it's okay. We don't beat ourselves up over it. We learn from it and say, oh, okay, I'm not going to be fooled next time. I'm going to listen. But we're just taught not to follow that gut feeling,
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as I don't like the term psychic, because there's been so much dogma around it, but it was when I really honed in with the psychic training, and really all that is, being psychic is just reading and understanding what your body is saying and what somebody else's body is saying. Because again, you and I were having this conversation with our mouths, but our bodies are communicating, our energy field is communicating with each other. And that's really all that is. So I almost want to come up with a whole different term, because I think so many people are afraid. I don't want to be psychic. I don't know. People think that psychics are like those people that you call at 2 a.m. and pay $10 a minute for. They're just a bunch of cookies. So I want to come up with a different name for that, because there's been so much, purposely so, dogma around that. But really, when you use the word psychic, all it is just reading and understanding your own energy and listening to it.
You and I are so alike. We're like soul sisters, because I think people can go through the Rolodex of interviews that I've done, and I've said the same thing. I'm like, I don't like to use the word psychic. It's got such a negative connotation to it. But again, they do that on purpose to make us uncomfortable with our innate abilities. That's really what it is. It's just a word that became naughty, and woo-woo, and what you said, cuckoo or whatever. It's so true. I would love to hear a little bit about the Abby, the child version of you. What was your childhood like? What were you like as a young girl? And did you have all of these abilities when you were younger? Like, meaning, were you able to see entities and communicate with them, or did that develop later on in your life?
So I actually had two tiers of things going on with me. And I am going to go, we are always at Journey to Truth. So I am going to talk about off-worlders, because that was the first thing that was happening with me. And that was about the age of 3. 3 to 4, I spoke about it with my parents. I would share with them, and I still have memory. I remember sitting at the kitchen table and eating cereal and telling my parents about, oh, they came and picked me up, and we, you know, I remember rising up and seeing the tops of the trees and going to, it was like I went to school and I had a teacher there and they were explaining, and it was always, you need to remember who you are. And that was the overwhelming message every time: you need to remember who you are, you need to remember who you are. And that's all that they were doing. It was very loving. And then sometime around 6 is when I started to have like the night terrors. I was afraid to fall asleep. That didn't feel good anymore. But around that same time was when I was seeing dark shadow figures in my house. They would always like peek around corners and stare at me. So I always just had an overwhelming presence of being watched and of being monitored. Sometimes that felt good and sometimes that felt really bad. Sometimes I would get a little bit like an upset stomach of being so focused and watched, where it almost gave me like borderline panic attack, like stop watching me, you know. And then it really, as a child, because of my experiences, I always knew that they were very real. I never ever questioned that, am I losing my mind? Am I crazy? That never ever happened. It was very, because I was, as much as I'm up here, I'm extremely grounded person, and I always have been. I excelled at school. School was very easy for me. I was bored all the time, and that actually drove my teachers crazy because they couldn't really yell at me because I was a straight A student, on the honor roll, and so they couldn't really be mad at me because I was disrupting the classroom because I made straight A's. But I was bored. I was bored a lot in school. And it was always odd because there would be most days before I would walk in, I would just do this. You can do it. Like, and I always felt like you can play human, like just get through the day, you know? I didn't understand why I always felt I was observing my friends. I was observing my peers. So I was in my head a lot, processing, trying to understand. Cultural communication is what I called it a lot inside of my head, understanding how humans converse with others, and emotionally too. But yet also a drive to educate. You know, I did reports. So like when I was in 6th grade, I did a report on the world's greatest mysteries, and it was UFOs
Wow.
and the Triangle and Loch Ness Monster. And sorry, I don't mean to say monster because that's not what she is. But at any rate, it's just always like, you need to know this. You need to know that these are very real. So I was always that kid. But for the spirits, I saw shadow figures. I heard them inside my house, but my mom did too. So my mom was hearing them as well. And we as a family would see shadow figures move. We would hear the doors shut. And it was so funny. When I was actually in my mid-20s, I was going to a medium. She was a friend of mine. And I asked her, I go, why is it every single house that I move into is so haunted? Like I always have activity no matter where I move. Why do I always pick the wrong house? And she just died laughing and she said, oh, Abby, it's you.
What?
You know,
You're
like it's you. You're not picking the wrong house. um, so yeah, I didn't feel it with the spiritual. I felt like it was happening to me. I wasn't a participant with it. And then honestly, and I know that this aligns with you, when I started having my children, that was when I really had to understand my abilities, because they had it much more elevated than my own. Their vibration was just so much higher. And so I really needed to understand it. And I spent a lot of my teen, I was so grateful for my mom, because, you know, my mom is really tapped into this as well. And so she had the Celestian prophecy books and all the new age books that you can find. And there were a couple books on UFOs that, that I read starting when I was about 9 or 10. I would just reread it and read it. And it always bothered me because I loved my childhood. I had amazing parents, amazing home life. Um, but every time I looked up at the sky, I always said home, home. And there were a couple times where that brought tears to my eyes because I didn't understand.
Why
I'm
you're
so
saying this.
happy here. Why am I saying that's home? And it was very unnerving for me. And now that obviously that I'm older and a lot of my memories have come back, now I understand that looking back. And I know that everything, we always come back to the memories and we always open up at exactly the time when our soul is ready to understand it. And and even with the off-worlders, they won't do anything with you that you aren't ready to integrate and acclimatize and make it better here. So if you are having those experiences and it's too jarring and it's too much and it's making you sick and making you depleted, those aren't good. Those aren't the good ones. Those aren't your family per se.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of clients come to me and they're like, oh, can you help activate me and help activate my gifts? What are they? It's they're normal questions, and it's very common. But a lot of the times I tell them, everything happens when your soul is ready. When your soul decides that you're ready for that level of awakening, that next step, only you can determine that. There's nobody out there that can activate you. I certainly can't, and it wouldn't be ethical for me to do that, because uh and I think part of it would be me lying, a lot of saying, oh, let me activate you. I'm not God, I can't do that for you. But it's really more about understanding the whys. What's going on in your life? Where are you ready for this next level of activation? When I was can't remember how old I was, but I had Skylar and Jordan, but not yet my daughter. So, but I was in this like spiritual space where I just wanted to learn everything. I wanted to meditate all the time. I was just in it. And my God, and I was feeling like you then. I just wanted to be there, but I love my family and I didn't want to die or anything, but I wanted to be with my guides all the time and feel that euphoric feeling that when you connect. And I was really having a hard time because obviously I wasn't grounded, and I was having a really hard time being a human. And I said, I want more, I want more. And they said, Sherri, you need to be a mother right now. This is your part of your journey where you need to be present for your children. They need you. We can't have you wandering off in the ethers. And they said it obviously way more better, more eloquent than that. But I needed to hear that because the way they said it made perfect sense to me. I needed to be a mom first at that point in my journey. And it wasn't until several years after I had Aramis where that I was ready for more, and because my kids needed me, and I understood. So I think that's the truth for a lot of people, not just parents. It has nothing to do with children or anything. It's whatever is going on in your life that's holding you in the space that you need to be right then and there, that you may not understand why you're not activated. And I'm actually, this is a question for you. A lot of what I get in my sessions for a lot of the clients is that they're being protected. Their soul is choosing not to be activated in that moment because they need to be protected. So they can't actually have that beacon out there, because then it would cause them to be more vulnerable to attack. So they're purposely unactivated in the moment. Are you seeing that as well in your sessions with anybody?
Absolutely. And sometimes I'm seeing it, especially if it's a parent, it's in correlation to their child.
Mm-hmm.
They're not being activated yet because their light would draw interest. Oh, wait. Oh, there's a child there too. Oh my goodness. Let's quickly try to bring their light down because it's going to be even brighter than mom's and or dad's. So sometimes absolutely they will do that. And I wanted to add, I had the same exact message, Sherri, from my off-worlders, because I asked them, like, where were you from, this age to this age? Because the guidance, having that connection didn't lead me, but the offer that was gone for a number of years. I'm like, where were you? And they said, Abby, you were having babies. Like it would have been too much. You were being a mom, you were growing life. It going here and there, it would have been too hard on the body to hold those different frequencies. So like, so we just you need to be human.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. It's time to be human right now. Yeah, but you know what? It helped me to hear that because something in my brain switched and I said, "Oh, I get it." And I was just a completely different person. I was totally comfortable being mom.
Mhm.
And that's what I was for that period. And I was totally fine with it. And I kind of disconnected from some of the spiritual work, and I wasn't meditating as much, but you know what I needed, what I felt I needed, but I wasn't like over consuming. And so it helped me. It really did. Is what I needed to hear. And actually, something that you said happened to me where you mentioned, I can't remember how you said it a little bit ago because my memory is not serving me right now, like we talked about, but where you said, I don't want to forget, like, don't let me forget, don't let me forget. And it's
Remember who you
interesting.
are.
Remember who you are. Yes, where your guides were telling you, or not to forget who you are, or whatever, however they said it. It's so interesting because when Aramis was connecting to me before she was born, when I was channeling her messages, like I talk about,
Mhm.
she would always tell me, don't let me forget who I am. When I come into this world, that like actually come in physically, don't let me forget. I wrote it down probably 100 times in many different time periods of time of me communicating with her before she was actually born. And at the time I was like, such an odd thing to say. Like, why does she keep telling me, don't let me forget? But now I realized what she meant and why she said that, because it is quite challenging once they get here that you can forget because it's so different in this density. It is easy to forget who you are, where you come from, and feel like you lose that connection. And so that made sense to me and I think that happens to all of us on some level, is we do forget. So we need that anchoring. And I think that she needed me as her mom, or needs me as her mom, to be that grounding rod, that reminder of who you are, and not so she doesn't get lost here. And I think many of us have that, whether it's our mom or dad or our sibling or husband or wife, our child, whatever the role is, whatever the relationship might be, some of us need that connection, something to remind us in some way.
And you writing that down, that was her fulfilling a contract. That was her making a contract with you. So when I connected with my galactic guy, my galactic family, I asked them, like, why are you always saying remember who you are, remember who you are? And they're like, Abby, you wrote that in your contract. They said you actually contracted out at what age in each moment that we were allowed to come and get you, to bring you up, because you want to, when we choose, in my particular case and so many others, I left I left a life to come and be here. It wasn't the natural I died, I was in transition, I was with source, and then I chose to incarnate here. I left a physical life, pulled my consciousness out, and chose to come and be in this space. Before I did that, I actually wrote a series of contracts out with other people, because again, they can't violate your free will, and that's why it's important that it was written out so that they could come and do that. And every single thing that I did was to remember who I am, so that I wouldn't be, because I knew that I would be stuck in this amnesia space. I understood that. And that I knew that the whole reason why I came here was to remember and to do this, to be that bridge. And so I just want to say, for you, you are writing out a contract for her.
Yeah,
You
makes
know?
total sense. Yeah, there's so many things. It's so multidimensional. Would you be willing to share any of your experiences, Abby, that like from, you did a little bit in the conference, going on ships, what it was like, what you saw, how it felt?
Mhm. Um, yeah, some of the memories that I've gotten back. And I will say, I went to a conference with my mom, and this was years ago. And while I was at that conference, and this is why I always support people going to conferences, it it triggered within me. Gosh, I don't like the word triggered. It turned something on, and I looked at my mom and I said, I am blocking out something huge. And I actually had this, like, I was dry heaving at some moments, because it was just all this memory was wanting to just come flooding back. But so some of the memories that I had is, I actually have a pet. I actually do have a pet on the ship. And I remember being there. I looked to be about the age of 7, and I'm just basing that on my height, or what I saw. And I was standing there there was a railing, and I knew that I was looking at like this huge aquarium, because it was just all glass. And I knew it was in my downtime. This was my free time. I had free reign. I could go wherever I wanted to, because again, this is my ship. Um, and I was looking at that, and these two women walked by, and I knew they were talking about me, but they were speaking to each other. And at the same time, I heard like a boom, like a little thud. The woman chuckled the other, and she laughed, and she said, "He always knows the minute she's back here." And I knew exactly who they were talking about. And I looked around this corner, and this animal is walking out of this room, and he's walking towards me, and I knew that he was mine. He was my pet, and it's like he knew my energy was back in this space. And he comes from Neptune, that came through in that memory. Um, but he had this super like snow white, that off white, very, very coarse hair. His eyes were super like low down. There was a bridge here, and his ears kind of went down and back. And though that aspect was like, it's almost like an armadillo type of a material on those. And his little, because he walked straight up to me. His top of his head was eye level with mine, so he was just the same size as me. He was big. um and his little nose, like it like came and it swirled and it swirled and it swirled down, and it got a little bit wider. I'm actually going to work, I'm working with an artist. I want to
Oh,
recreate.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, in his underbelly down here, and even like on his arms, on like underneath of his arms, it had that same like armadillo type of material. And I knew that everything about him was, it kept out the heat during the day, but it got frigid at nighttime. And so he was able to bundle up like this and keep all of his organs warm. And that was what was so important about the different textures that were on his body. It just came through, and I understood that. So I know that I had a I know
That's
that I
cool.
had a pet, and that's allowed. Um, one thing I will say that was interesting was the person that I left to come down here. That's who I always went and saw first. And when he would greet me, we never spoke, because the first thing that I would do, and this was important to me, he always met me at my eye level. No matter how little or tall I was, he met me at my eye level. He never once looked down to me. But I would run and go up to him, and I would put my hand right here on his chest like this. And I would just look in his eyes, and my hand would literally glow. The fingertips would start to glow. And what I was doing was downloading into him every single thing that I had experienced since I had last seen him. And
Wow.
so it was just being, and we would just kind of smile. And so I saw all the memories that were being downloaded into him, and he was just processing all of that. And then once that was done, then we would, just hug and say, how are you? And we would be together. But I did that every single time. That was my first interaction, was to download. And so he was able to see the earth things, but experience it from my perspective.
That's so crazy you said that, because I've had a couple of sessions with children
Mhm.
that have shown me something very similar, where I can't remember the word they've used, what they call themselves, but they're, I guess observers is the best word, but not really. And their experiences here are important, because they're collecting their soul group or whatever that they're connected to. Their family is collecting that data for a purpose. So they're going on these ships, and in a similar way, but not exactly, they are able to download everything that that child has experienced through his or her eyes, of everything around them. So crazy. I've never heard anybody else say that. And until you just mentioned it, it's like I feel like it's the same thing.
Mhm. And it's, yes, it feels extremely similar. Um, so a lot of us contracted to come down here because we needed to experience it from being on the inside. We needed to emotionally experience it, because not a whole lot of races have empathy for humans. Um, to understand what drives some of the actions. Because I have said to this person, because they don't aren't really fans of humans necessarily, But I said, they know not what they do. And really being able to, by putting the handprint, because they're feeling emotionally everything here, it brings them here. And if they can't physically be here, it brings them here from the heart space. Because again, it's right here. I'm getting them in the heart. And so it brings in that true empathy so they can understand what drives us as a species.
I think us as a species is it's such a factor in the galaxies, because they truly want to understand because we are unique, because the emotions is what makes us unique. And you can't, like, that's why beings will volunteer to come in here, because they're like, I want to see what that feels like. I want to make choices based on emotions. And you can't fake it, you can't replicate it, because it's individual based on so many factors: gender, demographics, how many lives, and it just too numerous to count factors, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that they want to understand us. Why do we act the way that we do? Why do we have such struggles? Why do we have such, why does our ego get in the way? Why do we fight with each other? Why don't we remember? All of these things. And it is very interesting. And I feel like that's the children that I mentioned. They're here to collect that data so that they could bring it back to wherever that it is that they're from, or what they do with that data to better understand us, so that they can help us. I think a lot of it is because they want to help. It's not nefarious.
Mm-mm.
Although I'm sure there are some nefarious programs out there. We know they exist in existence, but in this case, it's to understand us better so they can understand how to help us, help us through the challenges.
100%. What came through too from my Tibetan was we needed to have, in order for them, because they follow universal law, that there absolutely are things in place, in order for them to come down and intercede and help. So not do it for us, but to genuinely help, because they're not from here. They needed a certain percentage of the human beings as a race to energetically, in that heart space, reach up and out to them and ask for their help. And that's why so many chose to come down here and do an incarnation, and again sign the contract of, let me remember who I am, let me remember, because we needed the memories to come back. So we knew, oh wait, I have a whole family up there. Oh wait, I remember my relationships. Wait, they need to be helping me. This is really hard. We need help right now. I'm going to reach up and call to them and say, will you please help me? Help us. Help us. And so that was shared. It needed to be a certain percentage in order for them to actually come down and work alongside of us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've received similar message too. So I think this is a great conversation, because well, one, it's just nice to have two people who really resonate with what the other is saying, to kind of elaborate and expand upon it, because I'll say it in a way and you say it in another way. And I think it really affects positive change. And these are the things people need to hear about in the community. How can we put ourselves in a better position? How can we trust our intuition more, and et cetera? So, that being said, Abby, as we come to a close, in this conversation today, are there some main things that you can suggest to people on what is best for them right now to focus their attention on? I know this is like an hour conversation in and of itself, but just, some tips that you can give people on what's best to focus their energy on right now in the current time period that we are in, 2023, going into the summer, at least in this part of the world. What can we do?
Yeah. So I'm just going to share what I'm doing. This is what
Okay.
I'm doing. I'm doing this with my kids. If you're paying attention to what's going on around the world in the news, and we all, I believe a lot of your listeners understand that a lot of the pillars that we put up are collapsing. This needs to happen. Okay. It's going to get heavy, but if that's all that you're consuming, I can't go into another country and help them there. Okay. So that can feel overwhelming, but what we can do is to have our thoughts placed on, what are we doing when this is all done? And so I'm holding that image in my space. I'm getting my own self ready. How am I here to help at the end? because I'm not a military person. I'm not in those programs. So what I can do though is prepare myself. How can I help once it is all cleared out? Because this is where that creation energy is coming. This is where that manifestation is. So if we can begin holding in our heart and with our mind and projecting out, this is what I want to see. This is what I want for my children. This is what I want for myself. And even just going as far, there is no limits with this. What do you want? And really start knowing that each day that I'm going about this is one day closer to what that vision is that I'm holding in my heart. And at the same time, we have got to laugh more. We have got to have fun and laugh and find joy. And every time I feel that the world's getting a little bit heavy, I go out and I look at nature and I see that they're still doing it. They're still doing the life cycle. The birds are still singing and having fun. You know, so much of, even in movies, they show, oh my gosh, when the birds fly, you got to follow them because they're taking you to safety. My birds are still kicking it and singing and having babies and having so much fun. And then so I go out and I watch them, and those are my cues. Those are my follows, my things that I follow. And we laugh and we have fun and we have joy, and we look at this matrix as something to play with. I mean, my kids and I, we literally do play with the matrix. You know, and I'll give you an example. How do we, what does that, like, what does that mean, Abby, when you say play with the matrix? If
Yeah.
we're sitting, if we're sitting at a stop sign for a while, we're like, all right, what do you want to see? And we're literally put out like, I want to see my daughter this. I want to see one of the most interesting vehicles that you would never think that somebody would have a vehicle look like this. I want to see some stripes. The fourth car that went by, it was this big van, and it had the stripes going down it like tiger stripes were rust. That it's like they rusted it out in stripes and it went by. So that's how we have fun with the matrix, is calling out what I want to see, knowing that this is essentially a simulation. And so we have fun with it. And then when you realize, oh wow, I can actually do that, I verbally called in what I wanted to see. Well, my goodness, what do I really want to see? That was just for fun. What do I really want to see? And then that can even be like the people that comes into your life. I really want to build this. Well, I'm going to need this person to do this and this person to do this. Okay, I'm going to call them. I'm going to start imagining the matrix is bringing in those actors into my life to help me grow and build and expand. So that's how we play.
I love it. I love the laughter component too. We're so serious.
Mhm.
We got fun. My kids' favorite thing to do are dance parties where we turn the music out loud and we dance like no one's watching, and get really silly. And then my son is obsessed with cats, so we watch funny cat videos on like repeat, and we laugh our butts off. And then it'll transition to other animals, and next thing you know, it's people falling. It doesn't matter. We're laughing. We're just having fun. So I agree with that. We got to have some fun. You know, there's a lot of heaviness. So whatever we can do to break that heaviness, I think is a good thing. Don't be afraid to set aside time to do absolutely nothing but have fun and laugh. Like really, it's a great thing. And that helps with my daughter with nightmares, is we try to watch something funny or laugh before bed, so she's not thinking about all the things that her imagination takes her to dark places, because she's imaginative. If she goes to bed laughing or we watch something funny, she tends to do a little bit better. So it does help with their dream time as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. We don't do too like much. We don't do dark stuff and heavy stuff in movies. We try to do a lot of comedy.
yeah, comedy. Yeah. Abby, how can people get a hold of you if they want to have a session with you? What's your website? I'll put it in the description as well, but what's the best way?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I have a website. It's auricray.com. I am going to be changing that to just my name.com, abbylynn.com, but right now it's auric, AURIC, ray, RAY.com. So you guys can find me there and book sessions. And so
Yay. Well, I appreciate your time today, Abby. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for joining me. I hope to have you back again and we can keep our conversation going. But thank you so much for coming.
thank you so much, Sherri. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all your listeners at home too, taking the time. So thanks, guys.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you guys for joining for another episode of Grassroots Warriors. We have a lot of fun on here, lots of different content. So thank you for joining us. I hope this information has found you well. Until next time, bye, everybody.